So now it is time to calculate the TAM, the total addressable market. This is not just important for yourself as a startup, but also for future potential investors. So pay close attention to this topic. So first of all, let's start with a definition and then explain why TAM is actually important for you. So first of all, in regards to the definition, TAM is the amount of annual revenue expressed in dollars per year your business would earn if you would achieve 100% market share in your chosen market. So this is, as you can see, very hypothetical and it assumes 100% market share. So obviously you have to make some deductions from this, but this is the current definition of TAM. So keep that in mind. And the reason why you need to be aware of your TAM is, first of all, it's really important for yourself to understand how big your business is going to be potentially. And that's not just important for you. That's also really important for investors. And if you look at that, I mean, it's really important to understand, especially for both you and the investors, how much percentage of the market you think you can dominate. And that's obviously, first of all, your task to focus on and to come up with some assumptions on what kind of market share you can get with your product and service. So there are two ways on how to calculate the TAM. So the first one is a top-down approach. The top-down approach involves usually reading industry reports. It involves reading or just newspaper articles like Times, like Wall Street Journal. Those things are great. And some people even consider Google search, like internet search, as a top-down review and analysis. But as I mentioned, those things are great. But in order to really understand the pain points of your customers, those kind of research is not sufficient. If that is sufficient for you, a lot of VC investors will really doubt and be very skeptical about your ability and your skill to really understand the customer pain point. Or maybe you're already too late. It's already been discovered. So that's why you should go with the second method, the bottom-up calculation. And this one is usually done based on primary market research. And we will focus on that in a couple of seconds. So let's do a step-by-step and very simplified TAM calculation. This is what you can take as an example, but obviously in your calculation it has to be a little bit more detailed and it will be a little bit more complex. But for this sake, we'll make a very easy one. So let's assume you have an estimate of the number of potential end users, customers, in the beachhead market through a bottom-up analysis. So let's take 1 million potential end users. So this is the amount of end users, customers who are likely buying your product. So what you do then is you estimate the revenue that each end user is worth to you per year. So that's the annualized revenue. So there are two ways on how to do this. The first one is there is the option that they already have a product or use a product which solves the pain point or at least addresses the pain point. Obviously, you're going to offer a better solution, ideally. But then what do you calculate in this case? So you take your annual budget per year, so annual budget, and then what is the lifetime of this product? So it takes some research and some digging to figure that out. But if you can figure it out, you can see the last example here. So for example, a customer buys one automobile for 15K. And that lasts for 5 years. So the annualized revenue is 3K per year. So now there's a second option. What is actually the budget of the customer? And this is also very interesting because that gives you some more potential on increasing your gross profit margin here by really understanding how much money does the customer have to spend potentially on your product. And this is like 2 steps. First of all, what is the overall amount she has? And then the second part is how much percentage of that total overall amount is the customer willing to potentially spend on your product service? And then the final step is to multiply those numbers. And that could be, for example, you have the 1 million end users, you have the 3K from the first example of annual revenue. So that would be 1 million times 3,000 is 3 billion total addressable market in general. So having that said, this is a very simple process. And as I mentioned, it's going to be a little bit more tricky for you. So don't consider this as the perfect example here, but it can help you thinking about how you should structure this topic. So there are some limitations of a singular TAM. So there are other important considerations you really need to consider. And we briefly discussed about them, but they are so important. I'm going to mention them here again so that you really are aware of them. So first of all, it's the size of the TAM market. Usually, like mentioned before, between 50 to 150 million US dollars. Small market, easy to conquer. That increases your chances to really, and this is the second point, to dominate and to win this market over within a short period of time. Second, make sure you calculate the anticipated market share. Like we said, the TAM calculation is based on 100% market share. So what do you think is your share you can win in this market in a certain time frame? Second, fourth, actually, it's the gross margin. We talked about that for software businesses. And as we are focusing here on AI businesses, it should be a gross margin of, well, at least 80%, but ideally 90% and higher. This is a very good number. And then obviously you need a high CAGR for the next couple of years. And you need to use and explain to investors you can use this market to get into larger follow-on TAMs. But we will talk about that in the next video session. So finally, what are the unique challenges for AI startups when it comes to TAM calculation? So the TAM estimation must account for segments with theoretical potential but low short-term AI readiness. So there might be some markets which are not ready to use your AI. So you have to somehow price that in. And you have to make that transition and see if those markets are really ready. And we talked about that before, the end user, if they're ready, and the economic buyer to purchase your product, and if they have the skill set to really use it and leverage it. Second one is the variable impact. So cost savings and efficiency gains are customer specific, and that complicates accurate assessments. So this means that AI tools are very specific and provide different outcomes for different customers. It's very unlikely that they have always the same output for the same customers because of the different setup of the customer. So this is what you need to take into consideration. But there are also opportunities. So one is there's customized TAM calculations. So with a good bottom-up approach, with real data from pilot projects, you can really get really detailed and concrete numbers for your TAM. That's what investors really appreciate. So make use of that. This is really important. And then the second one is you can obviously, the data you have assembled also has a worth and also has actually a very strong value. A lot of people are willing to pay you for those data, and you can anonymize it and you can just structure it so that you obviously don't lose your competitive advantage. But this is something where you can create another revenue stream here.